Thank you all for attending. Today we are going to be talking about our updates from January, the what should be the final MIUI update, some tax season stuff, a little bit about our new Geo Post program, and then George is going to come in and talk a little bit about custom personalization settings. Our next webinar will be March 2nd. Obviously topics, we haven't decided on topics. We have a couple that we're thinking about. So for payroll, we added a voucher-only checkbox to the deduction addresses menu item. This will allow you to use the Pay To field in the deduction types menu item, but it won't generate a check during payroll calculation. Hopefully, then you can use the Pay To, so it'll generate a voucher. It'll generate and not a check number. We added the 2026 941 quarterly tax report as a draft, so you can technically calculate 941s, but it is just a draft. The IRS does not release theirs until March, so you won't be able to submit them, but you can at least run the initial tax reports to see how the numbers look if you're curious to see how the 2026 tax, how it looks on the taxes. And there is a few changes to the 941 quarterly report as well. We added a message reminding users to file the 8/9/22 when there are third-party sick pay payments for the year, and you select the include them in the W2 box in the W2 forms menu item. We added a border to import time to the time cards in the import time cards menu item. So when you select an employee, you see the time card list. You will now see a border separating the time cards, so it should be easier to identify when one starts and one ends. We added the ability to save up to 6 items in box 14 of the W2. Before we only had the ability to do 4, but now we added through spacing to have up to 6 items, as some people weren't seeing the qualified overtime premium because they already had 6 items in box 14. We fixed an issue where the work week start day setting in the settings window was not being saved properly. So the qualified overtime compensation calculation would always start on Sunday unless if you overrid it in the given employee. If you need to recalculate, you can always change it and recalculate your W-2s. Otherwise, you can keep it like that and it'll be fine. As long as you keep it throughout the year, you can change it for next calendar year, but just keep it. If you change it, then the reports may not match the W-2s. So if you've already submitted your W-2s with Sunday being the start date, just keep it as at that. But if you haven't done your W-2s yet, file them to the government, then you can change it. Because if you change it now and you've already submitted them, when you run the overtime report, the numbers may not match. So we added the totals by SSN at the bottom of the qualified overtime premium report. So you can see the totals now at the bottom. In the payroll types list report, we now added the FSLA type. So whether it's overtime, none, or regular. We updated the wage and contribution report to a new report engine. There was an issue in SSN Verify where if you did not have a middle initial entered, it wouldn't create the person, it would throw an error, so we fixed that. In payables, I removed the combined federal and state filing from the 1099 upload forms, as Michigan requires a separate 1099 upload. So that means even if your SSN or not SSN TCC number, when you did the application, that you check the box saying use combined, we won't honor that. So in the upload file, it'll show as blank. That way, if you didn't do it, it won't accidentally automatically come in and throw an error when you try to submit your 1099s. Because the state of Michigan requires separate 1099 NEC, even though they do say they participate in the state combined, at least. And if you look at the federal government's website, Michigan is on that list. So now that's not even an option. We'll add it back in if the state of Michigan starts accepting it through the federal government. But for now, we'll keep it out. We added a new menu item called Export Vendor Payments, where you can go in and print out a receipt for all your vendors. You can view, print, email. You can save the device. You can store in document management receipts for each vendor. We changed 1099 forms to only validate vendors that are getting a 1099 for the tax year. So even if you have them checked as they get a 1099, if they didn't make enough to receive it, we won't even bother validating it on the 1099 form. So it should cut down on the number of errors. By accident, we had an old vendor that didn't get anything, but it still, for some reason, was being validated. We updated apply credit balances to our new style of window. It basically runs the same as the old. The only difference is you can now select which balances you want to apply, and you don't, it's not just it applies all of them. So we added a limit button in the customers menu item to hide all the inactive customers, kind of like a lot of our other menu items, inventory, vendors. We have a limit button at the top that'll hide all inactive customers now. General ledger in the account maintenance, we had an issue where if you retire, when you unretired account, all the parent accounts, the retirement date field wouldn't be removed. So we fixed that. It really didn't change anything because we really only run off the retirement flag, but it was more of a visual bug. We fixed an issue the opposite way, where when you retired account, all the sub accounts that get retired wouldn't add in the retirement date. So we added that in. So now the account tree looks proper with when you retire account, each sub account will have the date retired. We updated bank reconciliation to include the payables distribution in the list of transactions. We realized we didn't. Well, now most people don't use their cash account for when they do AP pay, when they do payables, rather, payables post, they don't use the cash account in the distribution field. But sometimes we noticed some people actually did, especially at the township level, they just use their cash account. So those transactions wouldn't show up in bank reconciliation, so they never reconciled them. So we updated that. We moved the ability to add fields in the SOE menu item so that an SOE that is not being used in GL Post. So if you're not using and so when you cannot open the SOE in GL Post, you won't be able to add fields in the source of entry menu item. As just a general rule, if you're that's the only place you can actually use modified fields in. So I felt like there's no reason for you to add a field, let's say to ARP, because you can't open an ARP journal in GL Post. So we also added the caption can now not be blank in source of entry. Again, I will show that. In the Act 51 menu item, if you didn't have all the data, some cells would give a divide by zero error. Now they'll just be blank. Depending on how many, sometimes it could actually cause the Excel program to throw an actual error, but sometimes it would just look funny on the Excel spreadsheet. So we fixed that to now, if it is a divide by zero error, we just throw a zero or blank in the column. I believe it's a blank. So I don't know if you noticed, but the favorites button has been moved to the beginning of the menu instead of the back of the menu. One change that we had talked about in our last webinar that was implemented was we now updated the font size to get the size directly from your Windows settings. And things should look a whole lot more consistent and better with that because now we're not messing with sizes anymore. So 135% is the old default font size in ProFund if you're curious. Some of you may have encountered it, but we fixed an issue that would cause the text inside a tab to flicker when the user hovered over it. That's no longer an issue. We fixed that. We added back the ability to autocomplete in most drop-down selections that have more than one column. So I think the last time I said we added it back to call log. It's now pretty much in most places where it makes sense, where you can now just start typing in like an inventory code if it's an inventory dropdown, and it'll autocomplete. So, all right. So in customers, we added this limit button. See, we only have status active limit. And now I see, I guess I only have active customers in this database, but in general ledger, in source of entry, like AP, you can no longer add a field. ARI, you can no longer add a field. There's no reason for that whatsoever. In General Ledger Journal, we added a field, and now this caption, which will be the name that's displayed on top of the field in GL Post, this is now a required field. So that way, whenever someone's entering in the value, it just doesn't show up as a blank box. Pay customers, that's right. Apply credit balances. So the old one, it just popped up a box with a date that you choose what date you want them to apply to. And here, same way, you can choose your effective date. Then you can choose the journal description for the journal, and then you can click apply selected balances, and it will apply all the selected balances to any open invoice in that current fund. So we do limit it by fund. So if you use apply credit balances, and it shows you I created four, this is the journal number, and it closes it. And I don't think I have any here. I guess I did have an open invoice. Okay. Then if there's none, it'll just pop up a message saying there are no open invoices and it'll close. So, all right, payables. We added export vendor payments. It's a new menu item. You can specify a start payment date when a date range. Or if you leave it blank, it'll just go from the start until whatever, to the dawn of time. And then you click load payments. These are all the vendor payments that from the start of 1/1 of 2025, which I believe is the start of your fiscal year. And then you can click this to change where you want the documents to save. You select which ones you want to save. You can click save to PC and it'll save them to that output folder. Add to document management, we'll add it to document management with the proper links. So when you open up this vendor in vendors, you'll see it. You can click on view and that should load our PDF viewer. Yep, there's their invoice. So you can look at that. And then email will email the vendor. Email will email them if they have an email address. Will email the PDF that you see. So if I go, I don't know if he has it set up. I don't know if he has document management set up. Huh? He does. So if I go in here, back into vendors. Okay, that might not be available. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's not showing up. It might be behind the scenes. Let's see, do I have it? There we go. Yeah, it was behind the scenes. So you can see all the invoices that were added today. Because I don't think before they had any, so it added all of them. Okay. Let me go back through my notes. Don't think there's anything else. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, the deductions. That's what I was looking for. We added this voucher only checkbox to that. So if you check that and save it and then put a pay to on the deduction type when you run payroll calc, it'll generate a voucher and not a check number. But it will still look like a check, but there'll just be no check number. So that was the way we came up with of getting a voucher only on a deduction type. Because before we didn't, the only voucher only was the pay stubs. And then in payables, the other thing I wanted to point out, and this kind of goes into our next topic, but while I'm here, for taxes, when you're looking at the taxes for 1099s, this is business name right here. Means that on the CSV file, we will include it either under the business section or the first, middle, and last name. So that way, sometimes I can't just go off of EIN or SN because sometimes it's a business name with an S. Usually it's the other way around. It's a individual with an EIN, where it's an individual name, but they have an EIN and not an SSN. Usually it's not a business name with an SSN. So you're going to want to make sure if it really is an EIN and it's a business, you want to check the is business name. So this name appears in the business line of the 1099 and not the individual line. And we break this up by space. So if you did not check this and then you ran our 1099 forms, you would see Saul in the first name, I believe Centers in the middle, and Inc. in the last name field. So you want to make sure that if it is a business, you check the is business name. Now, if you select a 1099 NEC, this is business name is for this field right here. So if you type in, say, just Saul, and we check that this will be the name that appears on the 1099. We'll completely ignore this and we'll use that. And I believe if you check this, it'll again be in the business name or the individual. Works the same way as here. But if you have something in here, it overrides this because this is the doing business as field. And this will put it in the individual or business field in the 1099. So I just want to point that out because we had a couple issues where this wasn't checked. So all their names got put in the individual and not the business name. So not in the business field of the 1099s. So believe that is it. I'm going to pause right there for a second for any questions on updates. And then, all right, I am not seeing any questions. I'm looking at the one for the qualified overtime. There's a couple reasons why the qualified overtime may not match. Is I don't think it will match it. The dollar amount at the end on the qualified overtime report should match the W-2. It may not match the last paycheck stubs because the time periods could be different. And remember, not all overtime qualifies for the overtime qualified. So if it doesn't match the report, then if the W-2 doesn't match the report, then we may have an issue. Then we may have to look at that. But in the IRS calculation, again, I'm not exactly sure what the IRS, what they're using to calculate. I haven't seen it.
They're just on their website. It's a very simple, and I kind of thought that's what it was going to be with what you just said. But their simple example is basically take the amount that, let me read it, where generally the FLSA requires that most employees in the US be paid at least the federal minimum wage for all hours worked and overtime pay at not less than time and one half the regular rate of pay for all hours worked over 40 in a work week. And I know not everybody does that. We don't do 40 in a work week, we do over 8 hours in a day versus the 40 in a work week. And they're saying, if they have $15,000 in overtime, then you divide it by 3. So that's what these accountants are doing and telling these employees, okay, for example, we have an employee that has a year to date of $9,887 in overtime. They're taking that and dividing that by 3. And that's not necessarily correct, right? Based on how they earn that overtime or what that overtime is, when that overtime was earned. Because it's giving a difference of they're qualified, that one that earned the 9,800 has a qualified overtime of, where am I at? 2370, but they should be at, according to the accountant, they should be at 3290.
Correct. See, that's the one thing that we're not sure about because obviously a lot of these, I don't know how if it's a TurboTax expert or an actual CPA. The general IRS rule is that you take their total overtime and divide by 3 to get the number on if the W-2 doesn't have it accurately. Because that's the one thing that we're doing is we're getting it accurate to the very last penny of how much exactly should be qualified.
Okay.
And again, maybe we didn't need to do that. Again, the IRS didn't say one way or the other. They just said if on the document that they've provided for us, that gives us the outline. I believe it's document 60, information pamphlet 69 that we read was if it's on the W-2 correct, then as the actual qualified premium, you use that. Otherwise, this is how you find it. So we haven't heard any guidance of just assume it's 40 hours and anything over 40, but we assumed it was anything over 40, but they had to work 40 first. Even if so, it's if we keep hearing from accountants, we might talk to a CPA about it and see what they have to say.
Okay.
But for now, just stick with what's on the W-2 because
Okay.
I believe that's what they reported to the federal government.
Okay.
So yeah, well, like I said, we'll think about that. But to my knowledge, a couple of my siblings have gotten their W-2s and their box 14 was empty. So they had to contact their employer and I haven't heard back to see if what they actually put. So apparently most places aren't even putting the overtime on their W-2. So
Yeah, no, I had two this year. My two were correct, but then my spouse's, neither one of his had it included.
yep. So it's kind of a hit or miss type thing because again, this year the IRS does not include any penalties for not including it. Next year it'll be in box 12 as a coded box. And again, if they issue more guidance on saying like include any hour overtime, regardless if they worked 40 hours or not beforehand, then that changes things. But for now, we strictly followed the FSLA rulings on they don't get any overtime that is overtime. If they don't work at least 40 hours, any overtime prior to that doesn't matter. So if they work, let's say 12 hours in a day where they get 4 hours of overtime, but they only end up working 36 hours in the week, well, that 4 hours doesn't count. But it looks like what you're saying is the accountant said those 4 hours do count. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I think they're just it sounds like to me it sounds like I don't want to assume like they're going off of just what the FLSA is giving as examples, which is
yep,
just less in depth than what we're thinking regarding and they're not considering the 40 hours in a work week because that's not broken out on
correct,
a paycheck. So,
correct.
okay. Okay.
Like I
So
said,
go off of the report for the qualified
yep.
overtime.
Yep, for now, unless we hear something different from the IRS. But like I said, we went through this with a fine-tooth comb, so we're pretty confident. No, I'm not saying that they have it incorrect because the IRS didn't really say like, oh, there's incorrect or correct, but they both methods are valid for
Okay.
this year, is what I gathered.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, that kind of moves right into our next topic. I guess it's nope, it's MIUI update. Well, I don't know if you heard, but it will start on Monday, February 23rd, 2026 is their finalized date. They said it's going to go live then. You'll be filing your first quarter taxes, first quarter unemployment taxes through MIUI. On Wednesday, February 18th, it'll be down at 4:30 and it won't go up until it is done. So the MIUI EIN, which is your employee account number will be the first 7 digits of your MyWAM EAN. So that number they just said they're shrinking it from 9 to 7 digits. I think it was 9 or 10 digits, and it's now just seven. We will probably update our once this goes live. We'll probably update our reports to match any changes, but we're not going to do anything until we see exactly what they're looking for. As I mentioned in previous webinars, you use your MI login for business to access the service. You can log into your MI login account and request access. It should be granted immediately. You just go to services and click find that service and click request access. The other change is the taxable wage limit is 9,000 for 2026, not 9,500. Because once in the state of Michigan, once they reach a certain threshold in their account, then they reduce the taxable wage limit. When you calculate your quarterly tax report for the state in the quarterly tax report menu item, all you gotta do is type in 9,000 in the MESC taxable wage limit box if it is not already there. I think 2 years ago it was 9,000. It may have been 9,000 last year as well. So also look for usually you'll get a letter in the mail about it. So I'm assuming everybody qualifies, but there could be some cases where somebody doesn't, it's still 9,500. So just make sure that for you it is 9,000. So if you go into quarterly tax report and you go into state, you just in this box you just type in 9,000. Let's see if it'll work. No. Yep. And then when you create, I want to do this file. Let's just do desktop. It'll save it automatically. If I go back to quarterly tax reports, all you gotta do is once it saves it once you create the file. It'll save it. So just make sure you go in there and make it 9,000 instead of 9,500. Otherwise, what'll end up happening is when you submit your taxes, though you might end up doing a slight overpayment. So I just wanted to point that out on the MIUI. So for reporting season, the 1099s and W-2s are due today for the federal government and to your employees. The MASCs are due March 31st, but if you're doing your 1099 NECs, you probably already did the MASCs at the same time. ACA forms are ready to be uploaded to the AIR system, so if you use ACA, you should be all set to go. There's nothing special you should have to do. There's no test you have to pass, no scenarios you got to create. You just got to produce the file and upload them and hope that the IRS accepts them. So if the one thing that we found out this year that if you have third-party sick pay and you are not handling the W-2s, meaning the company that pays the third-party sick pay sends up the W-2s, then you must file IRS Form 8922. And you mail in a paper copy to the IRS. And the form is due at the end of February, or because the end of February is on a weekend, it is due March 2nd. So you still have some time to submit that. It's not due like today. All right. I want to go. See, do I even have it open? So 8922. Just type that in, and then here is the form, infillable form. So you can fill that out.
All right, very good. All right. I hope everybody had a great evening or a great weekend as well. I hope your today is going okay. I just wanted to cover base on a couple of things that we've done in our software over the last little while. You kind of notice we have the new little buttons at the top, a little nicer, a little more broken apart. But we've also done some work in our settings area. And I just wanted to cover, personalizing your pro fund accounting to the way you want to look. So under personalizations now, you may not know this exists. So I just wanted to cover it because I found a couple of people that never even knew we had any of this. So in personalization, we have different themes that you can use for your liking. So for instance, while I'm developing, I always use, for me, Material Dark. So that's kind of what it looks like. And you can hit apply. If you don't like it, you can change it back to Material Light Blue. If you don't like that, you can pick, Office White. Again, these are just different looks and feels for how the system works. It's perfectly up to, play with it where you try to do it. We also let you select the top bar color for your inside of here to anything really you want. I'm not going to change it because this is what I use for all my videos, so they're consistent. But I wanted to just kind of cover that, and then also, so there's just why they're slightly different. At least we have the ability to say, hey, we do got some ability for you to make it, kind of the way you would like it. I've always liked this one the best. So that's just one part. Also, we have a thing in here where you can specify, like when you first bring up pro fund accounting, which button do you want it to start out on? And so you can change which one you want it to start on. If you like to always be on the favorites, you can set that. And these are all individual settings. It's not anything that is, galactic here. This is just for you. So what you set in here for the personalization is kind of up to you. And then the other thing is the font size. Now I run my machine because I'm half blind. I'm getting old with a different font size. And then that's handled we now put that onto Windows itself. So you can set that in your Windows settings. So I'm just going to go there for a minute. Nope, I'm going to click on done. No, I did the thing. Yeah. Okay, hang on. So in Windows, let me click up my Windows. And if I'm going to settings, this is my Windows settings. And you can go to a place in here called personalization. And you can set themes just like here, like we have in Windows itself. I'm on the dark theme right now. Like I said, I like to use the dark theme. But then in here, you also have a place called accessibility. And in Windows, you can set the text size. And right now I run at, I believe it's 125, but I can crank that up a little bit to like, let's make it 163. And I don't know if that blew you out. Hopefully it didn't. But you'll see now everything's a little bit bigger in text size. And then if I go into Pro Fund Accounting, let me go ahead and log in again. You'll notice that everything is a little bit bigger. So you can kind of, play that game a little bit. And I just want to let everybody know that that's all available. And we do honor now all the Windows settings, where before we didn't used to honor what window was set to. So if you changed your operating, the Windows settings, we didn't honor what the font size was. So I just want to make everybody aware of that part there. The other thing that you should be aware that's coming is we're putting the videos together now. General Ledger Post now has got a new look, feel, touch that we'll be covering at the next webinar, but you're going to see it before then. Again, that'll be coming probably sometime in the middle of this month in February that we'll be releasing it. It works really nice. It's much smoother, much easier than the other one. And the nice thing is you can have that General Ledger Post open while you have other applications open. You're not limited to the one. So as we keep moving into the new, you can eventually you'll be able to have all the post programs open at the same time if you need to. Not that that's what we recommend, but it won't be a problem. Thank you all for attending today. If you do have any questions or any concerns, please just call us. The emails are getting to be sporadic because I'm never at my desktop, it seems, in the last few days here. I'm always moving around. So we'll go ahead and end today's meeting. Again, thank you for attending, and hopefully it was good information for you today, and next week will be good.
You are now working smarter with Pro Fund Accounting. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.